What's your opinion on the enhanced games or the idea of not testing athletes? First of all, I'd definitely like to see it happen and just see how it runs. It's kind of hard to believe that it will actually happen. If they actually do what they're planning, then it'd be very interesting to see what the reaction is from like the general public and the Olympics. I look forward to seeing everyone whine about it while attempting to praise one of the most corrupt competitions in history, the Olympics. Hopefully, it will bring to light some of the issues with the actual Olympics. Honestly, I think the biggest problem is the name, Enhanced Games. Even if it's unintentional, it implies that everyone that takes part in it is on PEDs, and it creates a division in the sporting world. Like, you either compete in the real Olympics where you get tested, or you compete in the enhanced games. Like, I really like the point they make about actually paying athletes and caring about their health rather than pushing this agenda that sports is fair and using PEDs is bad. I don't think it should advertise itself as a competition where you can use PEDs. I think it should just simply not perform drug tests and say it's a funded version of the Olympics that actually pays athletes. It shouldn't encourage PED use. Just don't perform tests, because we all know it creates an unlevel playing field. It should just be that way by default, in my opinion. The problem is there's not really a solution to the PED problem in sports. In my opinion, the solution is to just stop glorifying sports altogether, like high-level sports, especially the ones where abusing PEDs can help a lot, like bodybuilding and strongman. Children and the general public should just be made aware of the issues with high-level sports, such as corruption and the necessity to use PEDs. Of course, this is common sense to everyone that is watching this video, but if you talk to the general public, you'd be shocked to learn how many people actually don't know that high-level sports is full of drugs. But yeah, I don't think high-level sports should be encouraged or as a goal to work towards. It's not a healthy one. Sports can still be enjoyed at an amateur level. There's no need for people to compete at a high level. I guess a related question I get asked is whether I would compete in such a competition. And it's unfortunate, because if it was 5 years ago and an alternative to the corrupt IWF competitions existed, I would have probably competed. Maybe I wouldn't have taken it seriously, but I would have tried for sure. But right now, I probably wouldn't, because I've lost the motivation and I've gotten older. I think I grew up in the worst period of weightlifting, making it risky to compete against the best and it being impossible to compete against the best without PEDs. These days, it's much more possible to compete at a higher level naturally due to all the restrictions, and your chances of getting a medal are certainly much higher than before. And it seems alternatives to IWF and the Olympics is right around the corner, maybe, with something like the Enhanced Games. I wish I was just actually born a bit later. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe weightlifting is just going to get a lot worse. It's certainly easier now to compete naturally, but the sport has certainly gotten a lot worse, in my opinion. Aside from the corruption in weightlifting, did you enjoy competing itself? Kind of. I guess I did enjoy competing a bit, but I didn't see it as the ultimate goal or the reason I did weightlifting. Competitions are definitely not the reason I started weightlifting, I would say. I started weightlifting simply because I thought it looked cool and I was good at it. Coming from parkour and tricking, the idea of competing was a bit strange to me, because I did those sports simply because I liked doing them. Competitions didn't exist with those sports. It was a hobby that I simply did. I did it for fun, so I carried that idea over to weightlifting. And it's unfortunate that just training weightlifting and not competing is seen as strange. Like, you can't just clean and jerk 150 kilos without anyone pressuring you to compete. And when I was growing up, loads of people asked me when I'm going to compete, and lots of people just pressured me into competing. I guess this exists with other sports as well. Like, for example, I'd love to casually train the high jump or throw a javelin. But in order to do that, I'd need to join a club and be expected to compete in most cases, and not competing would be seen as kind of weird. It's not seen as weird to just do bodybuilding or powerlifting without competing, but for weightlifting, there's always this pressure from other people telling you to compete. And yeah, when I was younger, that kind of put me off the sport a bit. Hopefully just training weightlifting without competing becomes normalized, like just trying to squat 200 kilos for yourself isn't seen as a weird goal to have. Why aren't you wearing weightlifting shoes these days? It's just because it's easier and I'm not training hard, so I don't see the need to use them. Like, it's really nice to walk into a gym with no extra equipment and just start lifting right away. It's annoying to take off your shoes and put on weightlifting shoes. And if you include wrist wraps, knee sleeves, and a belt, it really becomes annoying. It becomes a nuisance. Constantly adjusting your belt, taking on and off your knee sleeves and wrist wraps can be very annoying. Having to wash these pieces of equipment as well and remembering to bring them and being useless without them is not good. I don't want to be dependent on those pieces of equipment. Of course, it'd be a different story if I was training at my absolute peak and wanted to maximize what I could lift. But I've been just casually lifting with CrossFit shoes that I wear outside the gym for about 2 years, and I've been questioning the need for weightlifting shoes unless I'm training very hard. I could probably go through a hard cycle of weightlifting training without them. Of course, I'm comparing CrossFit shoes to weightlifting shoes, lifting in regular runners. That can be really difficult. I always get questions about weightlifting shoes. Like, it's a huge thing to consider if you're weightlifting progress. Yeah, you should buy weightlifting shoes if you're weightlifting, but honestly, the obsession over them is probably just due to like the marketing and consumerism, I guess. But in my opinion, just snatch, clean jerk, and squat every day for 5 years. Get good at weightlifting, and then start worrying about the optimal shoes for weightlifting. Are you transitioning to powerlifting? I don't know. I usually don't like telling people my goals or even making goals in the first place, because once you actually do something for long enough, then you'll begin to learn whether you like it or not, I guess. As for someone with a large following as well, I feel like many people have high expectations and constantly ask when I'm going to dominate powerlifting or whatever, and people constantly ask what my goals are, what my future plans are. So if I say one thing, it then feels weird just to change my mind, which is a normal thing to do. I kind of regret telling thousands of people about my idea to transition to powerlifting, although I never said I was committed to transitioning to powerlifting. I guess this is kind of like when Omar Yusuf said he was learning weightlifting and people expected so much out of him. I mean, logically, it would be the next step after peaking in weightlifting, because I'd probably be better in powerlifting, like going into my 30s versus weightlifting. I did start to do some powerlifting training 2 years ago, and I kind of lost interest. Started doing more weightlifting and dabbled in other sports. So I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't think it matters. Interests and goals can change over time, which is completely normal. If you're interested, on my website there are many programs and ebooks, such as a squat program, hypertrophy and strength program, and weightlifting programs. If you'd like to get a great insight into my training, I have an ebook, Clarence Kennedy's Weightlifting History, where I talk about all my programs I followed since I was 15, and I give general tips you can apply to your own training. There are also bundled discounts available where you can get 20% off. Also, the Clarence O Starter Pack is still available, now with a huge discount. You can get a total of a 35% discount if you apply the code CK25 at checkout. This tank top and shorts combo is excellent for training, and it includes a 16-bit logo of me snatching like it's from a video game. Links will be in the description and pinned comment on this video. Why are you skinny now? I get this comment a lot from people online and even in person from people with body dysmorphia, I guess. Like, being surrounded by people who lift weights has honestly made me believe I'm not big, when in reality, compared to the average person, I'm quite large. It still feels strange when I talk to normal people and they call me big man or whatever, or they ask me for tips on how to get big arms. I get shocked because people in the lifting world have always told me I have skinny arms and I look too small to be lifting what I lift. And when my body weight dropped by 10 kilos, it was almost like people began to worry about me and asked what happened. Like I was ill, and they asked me like, why did I get so skinny? And the ridiculous thing is, when I was over 100 kilos, I truly believed I was small, and I was constantly described as the guy that can lift a lot of weight despite being small. My BMI at that time literally said I was obese, but people said I was small. So yeah, I think it's important to actually interact with the real world and normal people and not just stay in the world of bodybuilding and lifting weights, because it can honestly give you body dysmorphia. Like, I don't look at my physique and get depressed because physique has never been a goal of mine. I never cared about it. But just being surrounded by lifters has honestly made me believe I'm a lot smaller than I am. The reason I lost weight is because I just don't want to be 100 kilos forever. It's not easy to maintain that body weight without having excessive amounts of fat, and I want to feel more athletic. Maybe this is going in the opposite extreme, but I think most lifters are too heavy, and I'm noticing a trend of lifters gaining too much and excess amounts of fat going into their older years. And I don't want to have an obese BMI going into my 30s. It doesn't benefit me, even if I wanted to like maximize what I can snatch and clean and jerk. I think I would do better at a lower body weight. But I honestly think I should be getting like the opposite question if I was still 100 kilos. Like if I was still 100 kilos, people should ask me, oh, why are you still 100 kilos? Why haven't you lost weight? Aren't you like retired with weightlifting? But yeah, I've never gotten that question. What do you think about Olivia Reeves' training, about how little she trains compared to other athletes? That was an extremely interesting video. In short, she trains 3 to 4 times per week, which is extremely uncommon for not just weightlifting, but any high-level athlete. Most high-level weightlifters, those that lift close to world records, I guess, train at least 9 times per week. Maybe some train 6 times per week. But training 3 times a week is totally unheard of. But I don't know. Maybe it shouldn't be seen as a standard to train 9 times per week, because I certainly responded better, at least I think I did, to training 6 times per week versus 9 times per week. Maybe there's greater individual differences than people think. I never responded well to squatting 2 or 3 times per week. I always needed to squat 5 times per week to progress, or even just to maintain my squat. In fact, if I took 2 days off squatting in my peak, my squat would get weaker by 5 to 10 kilos. That sounds crazy to people, but it definitely was true, and I definitely experimented with that multiple times in my own training. Most people respond very well to squatting twice per week. I certainly don't. I guess amateur weightlifting has only recently exploded in popularity, with someone like Olivia Reeves only training 3 times a week at the start, like due to other life commitments such as school. It'd be unthinkable for a funded weightlifter in an Eastern country to only be told to train 3 times a week at the beginning. It'd be seen as a waste of time and money, and perhaps for some people it would actually be optimal. You never know. Another interesting thing in the video was that she emphasized consistency. She said it was much easier to maintain a 3 to 4 time per week schedule over the long run versus training more frequently. She said she still trained right after competitions because it was mentally easy. I guess like when your life becomes all about sport, it's easy to train too much and burn yourself out mentally. But having said all that, this is most likely an exception to the rule. Like most high-level weightlifters in history have found the best success training twice per day. And who knows, she could probably progress a tiny bit more if she began to train more frequently. I'd be more surprised if I heard if Lasha or Carlos Nosara trained 3 times per week and challenged historical weightlifting world records. I don't think women's weightlifting has peaked yet. Like, it's not unreasonable to see a 170 kilo clean jerk in the 71 kilo class, but for male weightlifters, I seriously doubt anyone could clean jerk 235 kilos and 90 kilo body weight by training 3 times per week. But maybe 215, 220 kilos is possible. Maybe increasing, tripling the frequency of training makes a small percent difference, but that small percent difference can be massive when you're a very high level athlete. Will people take veganism seriously, or will lab meat make the question irrelevant? I don't really talk about veganism too often on my channel, especially the moral side of it, because I know that's going to attract a lot of dislikes towards my channel. But in short, I think all arguments against veganism are weak, and I believe everyone with the means should stop eating animals. I mean, this really shouldn't be a controversial stance. It's just that it's unpopular. Like, when you look at the sheer numbers of animals slaughtered, it's one of the greatest evils, and it's still continuing right now. So it's pretty sad that people don't take it seriously. What really frustrates me, though, is the lab meat topic. It's because plenty of non-vegans say they'll switch to lab meat once it becomes available. Like, it's like self-admission that there is a moral issue with slaughtering animals for food, but they'll only stop supporting it once it becomes convenient to them. Rather than changing behavior, people wait for technology to solve all their problems. But you should really question whether lab meat would actually work. Like, it's never talked about in detail. Like, it has the potential to reduce water waste, greenhouse gas emissions, land use, and animal suffering, of course. But this is only hypothetical. There could be trade-offs when compared to traditional meat production. Like, there's going to be a lot of obstacles to overcome before it becomes commercially available. Like, think of issues such as like legislation, health impacts, price, and consumer perception. But the saddest part about all this is that there's already viable alternatives to meat. Mock meats have advanced so much in recent years, and that's what people should be comparing against lab meat. People struggle to identify the difference between real and mock meats. The taste, it's quite similar in some cases, but it's definitely possible, like right now, to scale up and make these products affordable, and it's very questionable whether you can do that with lab meat. So the solution already exists. It's really annoying just seeing people go on and on about this whole lab meat thing. People have been talking about this for the past few decades, honestly. Like, if it takes a huge and pointless innovation like lab meat to stop all this suffering, rather than people just acknowledging the problem and changing their behaviors, then it's just going to be very embarrassing. Do you think you will ever hit your top numbers again, or is it not worth it physically or mentally? Yeah, I hit my best numbers when I was 27. I'm now 31, certainly not too old to give up weightlifting and hit big numbers. It's not like you hit 30 years old and your athleticism instantly drops. It's a slow decline, and it can depend on the individual and training history. Some weightlifters get crippled with injuries and fail to progress even in their mid-20s, like Koleski from Poland peaked when he was 18 or 19 years old, whereas Liu Xiaojun had a long career and clean and jerked 207 kilos at 37 years old. I think that was his biggest clean and jerk in competition. Weightlifting was seen as a serious pursuit in the past, like it was people's jobs. Hobbyist weightlifters were rare. Lifters certainly trained hard and destroyed their bodies, and that's certainly happening today. But I think more people are taking better care of their bodies now compared to before, and more weightlifters are performing well into their older years because of it. So it's not just about how old someone is, it's about genetics, how much they pushed themselves in the past, and how many injuries they've accumulated. If Shizi Young didn't push himself as hard as he did, he'd probably be able to do well in his mid-30s. I guess this is due to like competition culture and funding and sponsorships. Like, lifters are incentivized to always compete and always train hard. If more like higher level weightlifters had longer breaks, then they'd probably do well into their older years. But going back to the question, at the moment, I'm honestly not motivated to try to beat my old numbers. Like, it would require a lot of training and time, and physically, I'm not sure if I even could. If I could beat my old numbers. I still do weightlifting right now because it's fun, but I'm not pushing it at the moment. I think it's best to take a break since I trained so much for years and years. But maybe in the future, I'll be motivated to try to hit big numbers again. We'll see. Have gyms gotten better or worse over the last 10 years? It's kind of crazy to think how much gyms have changed since I started weightlifting. Basically, there was no such thing as casual weightlifting and powerlifting. You had to go to specialized gyms to train, like to have equipment like platforms and proper bars. I had to basically place a mat in a carpet gym and buy my own equipment to train for Olympic lifting when I first started. Now, a lot of commercial gyms have platforms. Some even have things like illegal plates. They're seriously investing in these gyms. But yeah, I think this has a big impact on growing the sport of weightlifting and powerlifting as well, because now you can do it almost anywhere. Like, at first, people said it was thanks to the growth of CrossFit and CrossFit gyms allowing weightlifters to train. But the fact that you can find basic weightlifting equipment in cheap commercial gyms, it allows almost everyone to try it. When you think about it, weightlifting is easier to get into compared to a lot of sports, and this is something I didn't think would happen in such a short period of time. So on the equipment side of things, gyms have gotten a lot better. Where gyms have gotten worse, in my opinion, is the culture is more individualistic. People just go to the gym and don't want to interact with anyone, so it's no longer seen as a third place like it used to be. I mentioned this in my phone addiction video, but if you go to a gym these days, like close to 100% of people wear earphones, making it difficult and awkward to interact with anyone. Even just asking a simple question like if someone's using a piece of equipment is difficult these days. You have to communicate by sign language. It definitely feels like people have gotten a lot ruder, in my opinion. Yeah, it's pretty sad. Do you still do parkour and tricking? I barely do those two sports at the moment. On average, I probably do tricking once every 3 months, and yeah, I barely ever do parkour, but I can still do a bit. I guess the great thing about it is if I want to get back into tricking, I can easily do like the basic tricks, and with a tiny bit of effort, I'm able to get back to high level tricks. This is unlike weightlifting, I guess, where you can lose so much from taking a small break. What's the top 3 tips you'd give to a beginner weightlifter? I think the important thing is to do some form of snatch and clean jerk every single session. A mistake I see a lot with people's programs is they only focus on either the snatch or the clean jerk for each session instead of doing both. It doesn't need to be like a heavy full snatch or a heavy clean and jerk. You can do variations of those lifts. I just think it's important to constantly practice some form of those two lifts. The more you do, the more your technique is going to improve. As a pure beginner as well, it's no problem to start training 6 times per week right at the start. At the beginning, you won't be lifting much weight anyway, so you won't get fatigued. You're just learning a skill, so frequent practice can help a lot with technique development. Honestly, at the start, it's just going to feel like doing a lot of cardio. And another tip is for the first couple of weeks when you're learning the Olympic lifts, focus almost entirely on learning the snatch, clean, jerk. Don't worry so much about like strength exercises early on. There's no need to start following such a structured program when you can barely snatch the barbell. So first dedicate most of your time to learning the snatch, clean, jerk with lightweight, and then start following a structured program with progressive overload. So basically, I'm just saying to practice the snatch and clean jerk a lot. It really just comes down to that. But if you'd like a guide on how to begin weightlifting as a pure beginner, I have a detailed ebook on how to start weightlifting on my website. What stopped you from snatching 200 kilos? I mean, like when I was peaking, it was difficult to maintain my snatch, let alone improve on it. It would take an entire year of hard training to add like 1 or 2 kilos onto my snatch. So in the end, I didn't see it as worth it. And I think it was simply motivation that prevented me from reaching 200 kilos. Of course, some of you will think that sounds lazy to say it's just lack of motivation, but I'm talking about truly maximizing my potential, like approaching the human limit of what someone can snatch and training extremely hard to achieve that goal. It's a huge undertaking. Most amateur weightlifters never reach their full potential because they don't dedicate their life to the sport. Like reaching 95% of your potential requires a lot of motivation. Reaching close to 100% of your potential requires you to sacrifice loads of things in your life. When you're a professional weightlifter competing, then there's a financial incentive to lift as much as you possibly can. The motivation is much higher compared to someone like me who uploads YouTube videos. Have you ever deliberately tried to gain or lose weight in your lifting career, or did strength and weight gain happen organically? So I started weightlifting when I was 15, weighing around 73 to 75 kilos, and I gradually gained weight until I was 21 up to 100 kilos. I later went to 103 to 106 kilos, which was definitely a mistake, and it definitely negatively impacted my weightlifting technique and mobility. So it was only then that I decided to like try to lose weight. And honestly, it was pretty hard, and I think I would have benefited more if I weighed around 94 to 96 kilos, singular coefficient wise. I dropped down to 98 to 100 kilos. But weightlifting isn't just about pure strength. Like, even though I hit massive numbers in the squat and deadlift at a heavier body weight, my Olympic lifts actually got worse. Like, it's a strange concept. I was stronger, but the absolute numbers I was able to lift were lower. So even though my strength increased, my clean and jerk actually went down to like 210 kilos. Like, it dropped by 10 kilos when I gained weight and strength. When I lost weight again and lost strength, my clean and jerk actually went up over 220 kilos. So I lifted more weight on the bar even though I was weaker. It's really weird to think about. But yeah, at 106 kilos body weight, I struggled with the positions required for like snatching and clean and jerk. I struggled to rack the bar like I did when I was lighter and younger. And this is the same case for powerlifters moving from the heavyweight class to the super heavyweights. Their deadlift might not actually increase because it's harder to get into the optimal positions for pulling, and their hands can get fatter, making it difficult to grip the bar. And yes, that's the thing. I certainly noticed it was easier to grip the bar for the snatch when I was younger and lighter. More muscle mass isn't always a good thing, especially for athletic sports like weightlifting. And this is another reason why PEDs can actually have negative returns if an athlete uses too much. You'd be surprised with how little weightlifters use compared to powerlifters and bodybuilders. Too much PEDs can make it difficult to lose weight. Does this apply to everyone? Probably not. Certainly not women, but if you're an overweight powerlifter transitioning to weightlifting, you might benefit from losing some weight. I watched your favorite video games video on your second channel. Any games you played recently that you like? Honestly, most of the games I've played have been in the last 5 years. I guess this is pretty controversial to say, but in my opinion, this is the greatest period ever for video games. And I think it's thanks to the rise of indie games. Like, there's never been this amount of creativity in games before. Like, I don't play AAA titles anymore, and it's nice to see all these companies fail after producing terrible games year after year. But just to name some of the games I've really enjoyed recently. First one is Pseudo Reglia. This is a really well-designed platformer that allows you to really explore the world. It's possible to do sequence breaks without even realizing. It's like it's purposely designed like that. I really enjoyed that game. Animal Well, another great game. It's like a puzzle Metrovania with really cool sound design, Metro Brainia, whatever you want to call it. I guess another great game in that genre is Tunic. And I think many people are going to be talking about Tunic for years and years. Like, it seems like a Zelda clone at first, but it's pretty revolutionary with some of the ideas in the game. And another game I played recently is Bug Fables. It's like Paper Mario, but it really builds upon that game. I really liked the music and story. And at the moment, I'm playing Nine Souls, which is basically 2D Sekiro. It's pretty satisfying. So yeah, that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching, guys.